Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kaylina and I'm the Hex Witch, and today I've got a video all about service dogs. So let's get started. So service dogs, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I know people that have service dogs, my mom being one of them, and there's a lot of crap that kind of goes on within the service dog community. And I'm mainly going to be talking about true service dogs today because those are the ones that you see a lot of people get crap for just because they're either a small dog, and a lot of the times people associate service dogs with big dogs, even though small dogs can still do a lot of services as well, and sometimes even easier than big dogs, especially when it comes to the invisible illnesses such as stroke, seizure, panic attacks, any of those kind of things, that PTSD attacks that, you may look perfectly fine on the outside, but those things can literally come on in a second, and those dogs are trained to do certain things to help their owners get out of the place that they're in into a safe environment. And so there's just a lot of, I think it's generally just a lot of confusion, but there's a lot of assumptions that are made as well, and a lot of assumptions with how a person looks. And just because you don't have a limp, or you're missing a leg, or some kind of, or blind, or, it doesn't mean that you don't have something going on internally. And I've heard way too many stories lately about just the things that my mom has gone through, some of the things that some of her other people that she's talked to on like Instagram who have gone through stuff. And so I just wanted to make a clear video about it today, and I literally have the ADA site pulled up with the most common questions about service dogs. And so I think I'm just gonna read through these today, and we'll just kind of chat about it a little bit, because this is just, people really need to honestly fucking educate themselves, because, for somebody who has an anxiety disorder, and a serious one at that, people that fight her on this, it's literally causing the problem that the dog is there for. So I just feel like people need to understand that disability comes in all different kind of shapes and sizes, and that just because they don't have a physical disability does not mean that they don't have a disability, and that a service dog does not come into play and can be incredibly helpful for them. So we'll also talk a little bit about the differences, because obviously there's kind of three different types. You have your service dog, you also have your psychiatric service dog, and then you have your ESA, which is an emotional support dog. And we'll talk about kind of differences about them. The psychiatric service dog and the service dog are your true service dogs. Your service dog, just that is usually the ones that you see a lot of the time with the physical disabilities. Your psychiatric is for any of your mental disabilities, which there are a lot out there that are just as valid as your physical disabilities. And so they are recognized by the ADA and protected by the ADA. And most of the time, if you're a psychiatric service dog, you're certified as a true service dog, or as well. They are true service dogs, is what I'm trying to get at. And ESA stands for emotional support dog. They are not protected by the ADA. They are more considered just comfort animals. So if your animal is literally only trained to just you just feel calmer with your animal, that does not count as a true disability, and so they are not protected under the ADA. However, the psychiatric service dogs and the service dogs are. So we're just gonna go through some of these questions. I may get a little heated at times just because this subject is important to me, and I'm not saying there aren't people out there that do try to, con the system, so to speak, to, do whatever, but majority of the time, it's gonna probably be a real service dog. So we're just gonna go over some of these questions, and this is off at the ADA site. It's literally ada.gov, so if you want to fact check me, go for it, because I know there's gonna be those people out there who see this video and they're like, well, she's just trying to bring her animal everywhere. It's like, no, she's really not, and you really have no right to decide whether or not she's an official dog, service dog or not. So here we go. So first question, what is a service animal? So, under the ADA, a service animal is defined as a dog that has been individually trained to do work or perform tasks for an individual with a disability. The tasks performed by the dog must be directly related to the person's disability. Makes sense, right? Now, there's also, I'm sure as we go along it'll explain that, but employers, different places that public people can go cannot ask the dog to perform what they do for the person with the disability. They also cannot ask for identification either. They really can only ask 2 different questions, and we will get to that later. So these people out here that are treating these people with service dogs like shit really need to educate yourselves, because you're going against the ADA, and that can actually cause rights to sue. So what does do work or perform a task mean? So the dog must be trained to take a specific action when needed to assist the person with the disability. For example, a person with diabetes may have a dog that is trained to alert him when his blood sugar reaches high or low levels. A person with depression may have a dog that is trained to remind her or him to take medication. Or a person who has epilepsy may have a dog that is trained to detect the onset of a seizure and then help the person remain safe during the seizure. So, for instance, a couple of those would be considered invisible illnesses, meaning looking at a person from the outside, you would never guess that they have something seriously, kind of wrong, but epilepsy is obviously a very serious condition. PTSD is a very serious condition and can come on at any time. And all of these are very valid disabilities that I think people tend just to kind of slough off just because they don't either have a big dog, or they're not limping, or they're not, in a wheelchair, or they're not blind. And it's like, these are still very much serious disabilities that are just mental and they're internal. So it's like, yeah, physically someone could look completely put together, but that doesn't mean that an onset of a seizure couldn't happen at any moment and they need that dog there to help them. So it just, it makes me so mad. It makes me so mad. And you probably will see me more mad talking about this video than anything else I will ever post, because I just get so fucking sick and tired of hearing the stories from these people who have, these disabilities, and their conditions get worse because these people are fighting them on it. And it's like, you're the exact reason she needs the dog. So, okay. Question 3, are emotional support, therapy, comfort, or companion animals considered service dogs under the ADA? So like I explained before, no, these terms are used to describe animals that provide comfort only just by being with a person. Because they have not been trained to perform a specific job or task, they do not qualify as service animals under the ADA. However, some state or local governments have laws that allow people to take emotional support animals into public places. You may check with your state and local government agencies to find out about these laws. So yeah, comfort animals do not usually count because you can perform regularly without it. You just feel a little bit better with them. So they aren't actually doing a specific task other than just being there. So, I understand that. If someone's dog calms them when having an anxiety attack, does this qualify as a service animal? And the ADA says it depends. The ADA makes a distinction between psychiatric service animals and emotional support animals. If the dog has been trained to sense that an anxiety attack is about to happen and take a specific action to help avoid the attack or lessen its impact, that would qualify as a service animal. However, if the dog's mere presence provides comfort, that would not be considered a service animal under the ADA. So I definitely like this example because this is the circumstance for my mom. She has panic attacks and anxiety attacks and just in general a lot of anxiety. And so instead of taking medication, she's got her service dog, and it does wonders. Like, I mean, I can tell a big difference when she's got her service animal versus when she does not. And she's got all the documentation that she needs to prove that it's a service dog. But yeah, looking at her, you would never guess that there is anything going on, but there definitely is. And Tinkerbell, her dog, I mean, makes a world of difference. And Tinkerbell is trained in 3 specific, very different ways to help her when she senses an attack is coming on. For instance, she can literally lead her to any exit of any building, even if she's only been in there one time. Like, that's one of the things. Another one is like a grounding technique as well. And then I can't remember what the other one was, but they are very specific tasks that she is trained to do. So it's just, and yeah, just because she's small doesn't mean that she's not smart enough or capable enough to handle these tasks. She very much can. In fact, my mom's service dog is a Pomeranian, and Pomeranians are actually considered really great service dogs. One of the best smaller service dogs because they are so smart and because they can, sense the changing atmosphere in their owners. So they're very much considered a good service dog. So does the ADA require service animals to be professionally trained? And so, no, they actually don't. People with disabilities have the right to train the dog themselves and are not required to use a professional service dog training program. And honestly, that's probably the best way to do it too, because dogs and their owners are very connected. So if the owner is giving specific signals or specific gestures or training them in a certain way, that dog is automatically going to associate it with that owner. And it's just going to make it even easier. So that's good that they don't have to be specifically trained by a professional trainer. So are service animals in training considered service animals under the ADA? So technically no. So under the ADA, the dog must already be trained before it can be taken to public places. However, some state or local laws cover animals that are still in training. So, I mean, I feel like that one, I mean, I get it, but I also feel like when you're training your service dog, you have to place them in a lot of different situations to, teach them how to react in any kind of situation they may be in. So I feel like there should be a special permission kind of thing that it is in training and that it should be allowed in certain circumstances so that it learns the correct way to act and respond in any kind of place that an emergency may occur at. But ADA says no. So as of right now, it's a no. So under the general rules category, there's questions for this as well. So what questions can a covered entity's employees ask to determine if a dog is a service animal? This is my favorite for all of you companies out there. Listen up. In situations where it is not obvious that the dog is a service animal, staff may ask only 2 questions. Only 2 questions you may ask. 1, is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? That is it. You cannot ask what the disability is. All you can do is ask if the dog is in service for a disability. And 2, what work or task has the dog been trained to perform? So yes, you may ask what the dog does for the owner, but you cannot ask if the dog can all of a sudden perform that task right then and there. You're not allowed to ask that. You're not allowed to request any documentation for the dog, require that the dog demonstrate its task, or inquire about the nature of the person's disability. Should I read that again for anybody out there who thinks you can't listen to this? They are not allowed to ask for documentation or require documentation. You're not allowed to ask the dog to demonstrate the task, and you are not allowed to ask the nature of the disability. 3 no-nos, but yet it happens all the freaking time. So, do service animals have to wear a vest or patch or a special harness identifying them as a service animal? No, No, they do not. The ADA does not require service animals to wear a vest, ID tag, or specific harness. So no to all the above. It does not have to be shown for the whole world to see that it's a service dog. Doesn't need to happen. Who is responsible for the care and supervision of the service animal? Obviously, that goes without saying. The handler is responsible for caring and supervising the service animal, which includes toileting, feeding, and grooming and veterinary care. Covered entities are not obligated to supervise or otherwise care for a service animal. That makes sense. Can a person bring a service animal with them as they go through a salad bar or other self-service food lines? Yes, they can. Service animals must be allowed to accompany their handlers to and through self-service food lines. Similarly, service animals may not be prohibited from communal food preparation areas such as commonly found in shelters or dormitories. You cannot exclude them from places with food. They are still a service animal. They are required to be with their handler at all times. It's not negotiable. Can hotels assign designated rooms for guests for service animals out of consideration for other guests? No, they may not. A guest with a disability who uses a service animal must be provided the same opportunity to reserve any available rooms at the hotel as other guests without disabilities. They may not be restricted to pet-friendly rooms. And this also goes out without saying. You cannot charge a pet fee for a service animal. And that also goes along with the FDA as far as like the fair housing laws as well. If a person is trying to get an apartment with a true service dog, you cannot charge them pet rent every month. You cannot charge them a pet fee for a hotel room. And yet this happens a lot too, and it just happened to my mom, which is why I'm going on this rant. But yeah, you're not allowed to do that. So can hotels charge a cleaning fee for guests who have a service animal? Once again, no, they cannot. Hotels are not permitted to charge guests for cleaning the hair or dander shed by a service animal. However, if a guest service animal causes damages to a guest room, a hotel is permitted to charge the same fee for damages as charged to other guests. So yes, but odds are if it's a service animal, it is not going to be causing damage. It is very trained, it is very smart, it knows exactly what it's supposed to be doing. So odds are it is not going to cause damage and it should not be a problem. But recently, my mom, one of her friends, was in a hotel room, and the hotel was trying to say that her service dog had caused damage to a lamp. The service dog was never without its owner, and it was never in the room by itself, even though they were accusing her of that too. And the dog was always with her. So it was never left alone, and it was not a destructive dog, but yet the hotel was trying to get money out of her. So it's just not okay when this stuff happens, which is why I'm making this video, because it's coming straight from the government. So you can't say that I'm pulling things out of my ass here, because it's coming straight from the government site. And I can even link it in the bio below so that you can see how they answer these questions. So, next one, can people bring more than one service animal into a public space? Generally, yes. Some people with disabilities may use more than one service animal to perform different tasks. For example, a person who has a visual disability and a seizure disorder may use one service animal to assist with wayfinding and another that is trained as a seizure alert dog. Other people may need two service animals for the same task, such as a person who needs two dogs to assist him or her with the stability when walking. Staff may ask the two permissible questions about each of the dogs. If both dogs can be accommodated, both should be allowed in. In some circumstances, however, it may not be possible to accommodate more than one service animal. For example, in a crowded small restaurant, only one dog may be able to fit under the table. The only other place for the second dog would be in the aisle, which would block the space between the tables. In this case, staff may request that one of the dogs be left outside. But notice how they still cannot say that both dogs cannot come in. They still have to allow the one. Does a hospital have to allow an inpatient with a disability to keep a service animal in his or her room? Generally, yes. Again, service animals must be allowed in patient rooms and anywhere else in the hospital. The public and patients are allowed to go. They cannot be excluded on the grounds that staff can provide the same services. So I feel like that's especially important in hospital situations, especially with psychiatric, service dogs. A hospital is a trigger hotspot for anybody with, a mental disability. You have a lot of anxiety. You could have a panic attack because you have so much anxiety. That dog is going to be there to perform tasks to keep that person, out of that situation, especially during super stressful times. So what happens if a patient who uses a service animal is admitted to the hospital and is unable to care for or supervise their animal? So if the patient is not able to care for the service animal, the patient can make arrangements for a family member or friend to come to the hospital to provide these services, as it is always preferable that the service animal and its handler not be separated, or to keep the dog during the hospitalization. If the patient is unable to care for the animal and is unable to arrange for someone else to care for the dog, the hospital may place the dog in a boarding facility until the patient is released, or make other appropriate arrangements. However, the hospital must give the patient the opportunity to make arrangement for the dog's care before taking such steps. Must a service animal be allowed to ride in an ambulance with its handler? Generally, yes. However, if the space in the ambulance is crowded and the dog's presence would interfere with the emergency medical staff's ability to treat the patient, staff should make other arrangements to have the dog transported to the hospital. So, that's that section. Our next section is all about certification and registration. There's always a lot of questions that go into this section as well, just because what do you need to have to even register the dog? What can you ask for? All of those questions, which I get a lot of people just don't know. But watch this video and you'll understand. So, and I used to work in the apartment industry, so I am very familiar with these laws anyway, just because we got service dogs. I mean, not a ton, but right along we did. And so, yeah, being educated on what questions we could ask and what, we could say yes and no to. I mean, they took that very seriously at the apartment I worked for, because you can get into a lot of trouble if you deny a service dog. So, does the ADA require that service animals be certified as service animals? No, they do not. Covered entities may not require documentation, such as proof that the animal has been certified, trained, or licensed as a service animal as a condition for entry. So there are individuals and organizations that sell service animal certification or registration documents online. These documents do not convey any rights under the ADA, and the Department of Justice does not recognize them as proof that the dog is a service animal. But you don't technically need the documentation to begin with. A lot of people think they do and that you need to carry it around. And most of the time, people will just have the documentation on them for those idiots out there that just won't let it go. But they are not required to show it to you. They're not required to show that proof. So I don't know why people always make such a big deal, because you're not actually allowed to ask for it. So my city requires all dogs to be vaccinated. Does this apply to my service animal? Yes. So individuals who have service animals are not exempt from local animal control or public health requirements. Honestly, that makes sense, though. You don't want your dog contracting some kind of disease and passing it around to either the owner or anybody else, and it just keeps your dog healthy too. My city requires all dogs to be registered and licensed. Does this apply to my service animal? Yes. Service animals are subject to local dog licensing and registration requirements, which, I mean, that's not a big deal. That kind of stuff isn't a big deal. My city requires me to register my dog as a service animal. Is this legal under the ADA? No. So mandatory registration of service animals is not permissible under the ADA. However, as stated above, service animals are subject to the same licensing and vaccination rules that are applied to all dogs. So once again, no, they don't have to be registered as a service dog. So my city/college offers a voluntary registry program for people with disabilities who use service animals and provides a special tag identifying the dog as service animals. Is this legal under ADA? Yes. So colleges and other entities such as local governments may offer voluntary registries. Many communities maintain a voluntary registry that serves a public purpose. For example, to ensure that emergency staff know to look for service and animals during an emergency evacuation process. Some offer a benefit such as a reduced dog license fee for individuals who register their service animals. Registries for purposes like this are permitted and under the ADA. An entity may not, however, require that a dog be registered as a service animal as a condition of being permitted in public places. This would be a violation of the ADA. So, then you go into the different breed sections. And can service animals be any breed of dog? Yes, the ADA does not restrict the type of dog breeds that can be service animals. So once again, small dogs can be just as efficient as big dogs. So no dog breed is excluded, which I just don't understand why people can't get that through their thick skulls. That any dog breed is capable of being a service dog if, they are trained to do certain tasks. So can individuals with disabilities be refused access to a facility based solely on the breed of their service animal? If you said no, you are correct. A service animal may not be excluded based on assumptions or stereotypes about the animal's breed or how the animal might behave. However, if a particular service animal behaves in a way that poses a direct threat to the health or safety of others, has a history of such behavior, or is not under the control of the handler, that animal may be excluded. If an animal is excluded for such reasons, staff must still offer their goods or services to the people without the animal present. So yeah, stereotypes are not good, people. Stop making stereotypes about the owner and or the dog. It's just not okay and not necessary. Keep your opinions to yourself. If a municipality, wow, I don't know how to talk. Okay, has an ordinance that bans certain dog breeds, does the ban apply to service animals? I'm guessing no. I was correct. No, so they cannot prohibit specific breeds of dogs, must make an exception for a service animal of a prohibited breed, unless the dog poses a direct threat to the health or safety of others. Under the direct threat provision of the ADA, local jurisdictions need to determine on a case-by-case basis whether a particular animal can be excluded based on that particular animal's actual behavior or history, but they may not exclude a service animal because of fears of generalizations about how an animal or breed might behave. It is important to note that breed restrictions differ significantly from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. In fact, some jurisdictions have no breed restrictions. So also in the apartment complexes, we ran into this a lot because we did have certain dog breeds that were not allowed, either because they were known to be kind of aggressive, more aggressive breeds, even though I personally don't believe that. I feel like the owner makes the dog, so if you're training the dog to be well behaved, it's going to be well behaved. And the whole generalization, especially when it comes to pit bulls. Oh, I hate the generalizations that people make about pit bulls. They can be extremely sweet and loyal dogs, and they are not going to just attack you if you come, 2 feet near them. And so it's just, it's unfair when certain dog breeds are excluded just because they may attack somebody. Any dog could attack somebody if they really wanted to, or if they felt threatened, prime example, I have a little wiener dog and he's the biggest asshole out there. So, but obviously knowing that about him, I keep him kind of away from people and especially other dogs, just so that we don't have a problem. The responsibility always falls on the owner, It's the owner's responsibility to control their animal. So yeah, and I don't know if you've ever seen, but somebody has a service alligator, and I can't remember what his name is. I want to say it's Charlie or something, but I'm pretty sure that's wrong. And he actually is a certified service animal, and he's an alligator, and he gives hugs, and I want to say his owner was past military or something, and so he helps with PTSD, I think. Don't quote me on that because I don't remember for sure. It's been a little while since I read about that story, but I thought that was too funny. Any animal can be trained to be a service animal. Now, I do know, I think they have some regulations as far as planes go, as far as which animals you can actually bring on a plane. I'm pretty sure it's just dogs and cats at this time that they allow on planes, and I don't even know if they're technically allowed to do that or not. I think I have another website pulled up about planes and stuff as well. But yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of rules when it comes to service animals, and a lot of things that are not allowed when, you know, people are trying to exclude them, and it's illegal. It's actually illegal. So the next section is all about exclusion of service animals. What's allowed, what's not allowed. So when can a service animal be excluded? And it says the ADA does not require covered entities to modify policies, practices, or procedures if it would fundamentally alter the nature of the goods, services, programs, or activities provided to the public, nor does it overrule legitimate safety requirements. If admitting service animals would fundamentally alter the nature of a service or program, service animals may be prohibited. In addition, if a particular service animal is out of control and the handler does not take effective action to control it, or if it is not housebroken, that animal may be excluded. So yeah, if your animal is going around attacking everybody, probably not safe, and is probably not doing its job very well, and or not trained at all. Or if you've decided not to get your pet its vaccinations and it's foaming at the mouth and it's, you know, infected with something and could seriously harm the safety of everybody around it, yeah, again, probably not a real service dog, honestly. And yeah, it's a health concern, but those are really very rare instances. So when might a service dog's presence fundamentally alter the nature of a service or program provided to the public? I'll be interested to see what they say counts as that. In most settings, the presence of a service animal will not result in a fundamental alteration. However, there are some exceptions. For example, at boarding schools, service animals could be restricted from a specific area of a dormitory reserved specifically for students with allergies to dog dander. So yeah, you know, I mean, the person with the service dog has just as much right to be there, but also if you're putting somebody at a risk because of allergens and they can't safely remove themselves from that situation, then yes, that's obviously a case by case basis, and you don't want somebody, you know, dying from a dog allergen because they can't safely get away from it. But if you're at the store and someone's in the, I don't know, rice aisle and you're allergic to dogs, you can remove yourself for a half a minute, let the person with the dog get their food, and they're going to be out of the aisle in, 2 seconds. So it's like, that doesn't qualify as a reason to not allow them to be there when you can easily remove yourself for just a short amount of time to protect yourself, as well as allowing the person who needs the service animal to have their animal. So at a zoo, service animals can be restricted from areas where the animals on display are the natural prey or natural predators of dogs, where the presence of a dog would be disruptive, causing the displayed animals to behave aggressively or become agitated. They cannot be restricted from other areas of the zoo. So I mean, yeah, I get that. I get that. Maybe don't patrol the lion area with your dog right there if they haven't eaten yet that day. But yeah, they're still allowed to be in there. What does under control mean? Do service animals have to be on a leash? Do they have to be quiet and not bark? So this is kind of a long paragraph, so stick with me. The ADA requires that service animals be under the control of the handler at all times. In most instances, the handler will be the individual with a disability or a third party who accompanies the individual with a disability. In the school K-2 context and in similar settings, the school or similar entity may need to provide some assistance to enable a particular student to handle his or her service animal. The service animal must be harnessed and leashed or tethered while in public places unless these services interfere with the service animal's work or the person's disability prevents use of these devices. In that case, the person must use voice, signal, or other effective means to maintain control of the animal. For example, a person who uses a wheelchair may use a long retractable leash to allow her service animal to pick up or retrieve items. She may not allow the dog to wander away from her and must maintain control of the dog. Even if it is retrieving an item at a distance from her, or a returning veteran who has PTSD and has great difficulty entering the unfamiliar spaces may have a dog that is trained to enter a space, check to see that no threats are there, and come back and signal that it is safe to enter. The dog must be off leash to do its job, but may be leashed at other times. Under control also means that a service animal should not be allowed to bark repeatedly in a lecture hall, theater, library, or other quiet place. However, if a dog barks just once or barks because someone has provoked it, this would not mean that the dog is out of control. Exactly. And if the dog is, let's say someone is having a seizure, the dog is probably most likely going to bark to signal the attention to other people to come help. So, and I mean, I think there's just this general thought that a dog is a dog and that it's not like intelligent enough to behave appropriately, but that's such a dumb thought because, and I don't mean to offend people and I don't mean to come off like super rude. It's just, I've had so much experience with this and I've seen my mom go through so many tough situations that should have never, ever, ever happened because people just will not like read the regulations and abide by them. So, and it just should be so simple. Like you can literally pull up this document, search for the question and get your answer before you just make assumptions about somebody. And so, yeah, I mean, dogs that are service dogs, I mean, they are well trained, guys. They're really well trained. They are not going to misbehave. They just aren't because they've been trained so well that, and the dog takes, I would like to say, great pride in what they do to help their owner. Like they know that is their job, that is their purpose, and they take it very seriously. Unlike the laziness of humans in the world today, dogs very much like to have a job and a purpose, and these service dogs take their job very seriously. I mean, my mom's dog is right there with her every single second. Like, she does not leave her. When she's on the ground, she's always looking up at her. She's always knows where my mom is, always following her, whether she's on a leash or not. These dogs are trained, and their person is their person, and they take care of them. So they're not just going to wander off if they're a true service dog. They just aren't. So I think that needs to be made very clear that a true service dog, you're going to be able to recognize it because whether they're identified or not, they're just, it's a different level of control that those dogs have versus just a pet. So what can my staff do when a service animal is being disruptive? If a service animal is out of control and the handler does not take effective action to control it, staff may request that the animal be removed from the premises. I mean, it has to be like out of control, like completely out of control. Not, it barks once because, like they said, it was provoked and, that doesn't count for being able to kick them out. Are hotel guests allowed to leave their service animals in their hotel room when they leave the hotel? So no, the dog must be under the handler's control at all times. But it's going to be. If it's a true service dog, it's going to be. And trust me, these owners want their dog with them at all times because that dog helps them with these certain tasks. And I'm not using the word like comfort as like, oh, it's just a comfort animal. No, but it does lead to some comfort and some peace at mind. That's probably the better word, peace at mind for these, especially people with seizures and PTSD and even panic attacks. I mean, I know I've said it time and time again whenever I've mentioned it on Instagram or anything about service animals that, panic attacks literally feel like heart attacks at times. Like they can be that intense. And there's a lot of times people will automatically go to the hospital thinking they're having a panic attack, even if it's someone of a young age, because they're just having so much pain and they end up, it's a panic attack. So if that service dog is trained to ground and to trail and lead them away to an exit to calm that person down, they can stop that panic attack from escalating and becoming very serious. So those dogs are always going to be with their owners because the owners want them with them at all times. So that if something ever does happen at any time, any moment at all, they're prepared and they're ready for it. So what happens if a person thinks a covered entity's staff has discriminated against him or her? An individual who believes that they have been illegally denied access or service because they use service animals may file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Justice. Individuals also have the right to file a private lawsuit in federal court charging the entity with discrimination under the ADA. So that Hilton hotel in, what was it, Amarillo? My mom could technically sue you. So, and she's not that kind of person. She just called and talked to them. But she technically has the right to do that because the bitch that was working there that day was literally a demon from hell and treated my mom with just total disrespect. Bridget, whoever you are, like, she deserves to be fired is what she deserves to be. And I guess they've had other problems with her as well. And yeah, my mom technically has the right to sue. And if she was that kind of person, which you're lucky she's not, because there's a lot of sue-happy people in this world, you guys could be in some trouble because she was denied and she couldn't even stay there because this lady was so rude to her and kept shoving the pet fee paperwork at her and, you know, asking her, well, are you okay now? And all this kind of stuff. And it's like completely unprofessional, just completely unprofessional. And you're literally provoking my mom to have a panic attack, which is exactly why she has the service dog in the first place. So that's my rant. I will let it go now. My mom's let it go, but oh, I hate hearing things about like that because hotels have no right to do that. So this last little section, which I know I've been talking to about an hour already, man, that's crazy to me. Anyway, this last section is just kind of miscellaneous questions that people have about the subject. And so we'll go over these just really quickly, and then I will kind of pretty much wrap this up. So are stores required to allow service animals to be placed in a shopping cart? Generally, the dog must stay on the floor or the person must carry the dog. For example, if a person with diabetes has a glucose alert dog, he may carry the dog in a chest pack so it can be close to his face to allow the dog to smell his breath to alert him of a change in glucose levels. Honestly, I feel like that's kind of base by base. I mean, if a dog's in a cart and a panic attack is coming on, they're still going to be able to sense their owner's energy and, you know, either start getting restless, or odds are at that point the owner is going to pick them up anyway because they're going to be like, or put them on the floor so that they can find the exit. I mean, owners and dogs, and service dogs, they work really cohesively together. So they read each other's energies, and that's part of the beauty of them, is that they just work so well together that they know what to do for each other. The owner listens to the dog, and the dog knows what to do for the owner. So, are restaurants, bars, and other places that serve food or drink required to allow service animals to be seated on chairs or allow the animal to be fed at the table? So, I don't know why people would be doing that anyway. So no, seating, food, and drink are provided for customer use only. The ADA gives a person with a disability the right to be accompanied by his or her service animal, but covered entities are not required to allow an animal to sit or be fed at a table. Yeah, I mean, the owner may bring a little bowl of water or something for the dog to, you know, drink on the floor. Or maybe a treat, you know, because dogs are food incentive and, you know, they love a good treat too if their owner's eating. So I don't feel like that's a big deal. But yeah, I mean, sitting it at the table, probably not necessary, nor have I seen anybody actually do that. Are gyms, fitness centers, hotels, or municipalities, I cannot say that word today, they have swimming pools required to allow a service animal in the pool with its handler? So I guess no. The ADA does not override public health rules that prohibit dogs in swimming pools. However, service animals must be allowed on the pool deck and in other areas where the public is allowed to go. Okay, so yeah, I was wondering about that because I was like, I know they're allowed on the pool deck, but yeah, in the water, I mean, no. Are churches, temples, synagogues, mosques, and other places of worship required to allow individuals to bring their service animals into the facility? So I guess no as well. Religious institutions and organizations are specifically exempt from the ADA. However, there may be state laws that apply to religious organizations. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised about that one, but I guess when it comes to religion, there's probably a lot of different viewpoints, and you probably need to respect that somewhat, but I am a little bit surprised by that one. Do apartments, mobile home parks, and other residential properties have to comply with the ADA? So the ADA applies to housing programs administered by state and local governments, such as public housing authorities, and by places of public accommodations, such as public and private universities. In addition, the Fair Housing Act applies to virtually all types of housing. So, yeah. Both public and privately owned, including housing covered by the ADA. Under the Fair Housing Act, housing providers are obligated to permit, as a reasonable accommodation, the use of animals that work, provide assistance, or perform tasks that benefit persons with a disability, or provide emotional support to alleviate a symptom or effect of a disability. For information about these fair housing requirements, see HUD's Notice on Service Animals and Assistance Animals for People with Disabilities in Housing and HUD-funded programs. And when you go onto their site, they literally have another section that you can just click to go to that area if you need to read about it. Do federal agencies such as the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs have to comply with ADA? So no. Section 504 of Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is the federal law that protects the rights of people with disabilities to participate in federal programs and services. For information or to file a complaint, contact the agency's Equal Opportunity Office. And lastly, do commercial airlines have to comply with ADA? So, I guess no. The Air Carrier Access Act is the federal law that protects the rights of people with disabilities in air travel. For information or to file a complaint, contact the U.S. Department of Transportation Aviation's Consumption Protection Division. Had this phone number. So if you need that, I guess go there. But then on this other page that's also like certified, it talks about like airplanes and stuff. And if it is a registered service dog with the ADA, they have to be allowed to sit on their owner's lap. Like they're not allowed to be stuffed in their bag. And I know this for a fact because my mom, at one point, her dog was an ESA because at the time, you know, they didn't realize the severity of kind of her anxiety disorder. And Tink wasn't, I mean, she was doing things naturally, but maybe not trained to the point she is now. And so then they trained her even more, and talking to doctors and everything, and realizing my mom really didn't want to take medication due to the fact she's got some other issues that would conflict possibly with the medication and give her some really adverse side effects. They came to the conclusion that the service dog was the best option for her, and I completely agree with that. And so obviously got her all trained up with her 3 very specific tasks that she does, and of course got a doctor's note, registered her. She's got the paperwork, she's got the tag if she needs it, even though it's not required. And so, but before, when she was just an ESA, she had to be inside the bag by my mom's feet. But now that she's a true service dog, she can sit on my mom's lap the whole time. So, Air Carrier, the Access Act is what they call it, or ACAA. So yes, the ACAA defines a service animal as any guide dog, signal dog, or other animal individually trained to provide assistance to an individual with a disability. U.S. air carriers and their foreign partners must recognize service animals and consider their presence in the cabin to be a reasonable modification of policy. So I guess no, the ACAA says that air carriers must accept service animals based on any type of identification or the credible verbal assurances of a qualified individual with a disability using the animal. No, not usually. Under the ACAA, air carriers are to obtain credible verbal assurances from passengers who have service animals that the animal is indeed a trained service animal. If the verbal assurance does not seem credible, the carrier may ask for medical documentation. While the ACAA does allow carriers to ask for medical documentation if an individual wants to have his or her service animal in the cabin, the Department of Transportation says that it urges carriers not to have such a requirement. So under the ACAA, U.S. air carriers and their foreign partners may request current documentation by a physician on letterhead from individuals who would like to bring their emotional support animals, which do not need to have had specific training, into the cabin. So yes, they can require if it's an emotional support animal. And honestly, I feel like they've gotten even more strict about ESAs recently, because there were a lot of people out there just trying to, you know, fool the system because they didn't want to pay for the pet fee or whatever else. And I'm not saying there aren't people out there that are like that, because there are. It just makes it super complicated for the people that really do have the service dog and who are put in even more stressful situations that are unnecessary and treated with a lot of disrespect just by stereotypes and just judging a person by how they look. That's the part I have problems with. If you handle it professionally and you're just like, ask those 2 questions if you feel the need to ask them, which, I mean, it's your right to ask those 2 questions. You can do that fine. And that's probably not going to stress the person out, because obviously they know what their dog is trained to do. But if you're just giving crap to give crap and just being really disrespectful before you even ask those questions or get the truth, then I really have a hate for you people. The ACWA does not address service animals in training and is not required to carry them, as they do not meet the requirements of a service animal. According to the statute, however, carriers are free to make their own individual policies with regards to carrying any pets, including service animals, in training, provided they comply with the Animal Welfare Act and are consistent with health and safety codes. So no, they don't actually have to allow an animal in training. But this is also another website which I can probably post, because it also goes through the Fair Housing Act as well, which I've already kind of gone over, especially being in that industry. I am pretty familiar with all of that, but it also has just the ADA's rules in general, the Fair Housing Act, as well as the air carrier that I just read as well. And so I will put this in there as well. This is also a government site, Kansas Office of the Governor, so Commission on Disability Concerns, as well as the Equal Citizens in Society. And then lastly, there's to get your dog certified, which you technically, again, don't have to do, but it is smart to do just so that you have it on record in case you do run across those asshole people that just won't let things go and won't believe you, even though they don't have a right to do that. And I know I've said that a billion times, but it's true. But just having that proof is just helpful for you personally, so that it's less stressful, just in case you can be like, I know I don't have to give you this, it's not under any kind of rule that I have to, but I have it, so you need to abide by it. But you just need to confirm that you have a qualifying disability. You need to train your dog for specific service and tasks. They have to be able to do something to help your disability. If they're just sitting there and you're just holding them and they can do absolutely nothing else, that's an ESA and that doesn't count. So take a public access test is the 3rd step. So a service dog must also be trained to perform its duties in public environments, which is true. If it can do it at home, great. But if it gets all of a sudden scared and confused out in public, it's not doing you any good either. So make sure that it can do those tasks out in public as well. And then register your service dog. So like we've said 5 billion times, it doesn't have to be registered, but probably a smart thing to do. And once again, you don't have to have a tag, you don't have to have a vest, you don't have to have anything to signal that they're on duty. But if you want a little tag or something just to keep with you to show that it is official, like I said, it doesn't hurt. You don't have to, but it doesn't hurt. And it really does diminish the amount of assholes that you run into. Even though it still could be clear as day, and some people will still question just depending on how you look, which is why I just really press the invisible illnesses, and that is kind of a term that's come about because there's a lot of mental illness, and I still feel like that is just a massive topic that just does not get talked about enough. And I feel like everybody's got some kind of mental thing to a certain degree. Even if you can, you know, be good 80% of the time, that extra, you know, 20%, you may need something to kind of help you. So anywho, okay, so that's kind of my video today. I'm sorry it was so long, and I'm sorry I ranted a lot, but I felt like this was the best way to do that video. That way you were hearing it directly from the government's site and not just me blabbing, because I know the rules, I know the laws and regulations, obviously, because someone I'm very close to. I want to know all the rights and stuff, so when we do go out to public and someone tries to say something, I can be like, shut up, you're wrong. And I don't like to get aggressive like that, but there are times where there are just some really big assholes out there, and I'm just like, what is your problem, people? Like, you don't even know the rules and regulations, yet you're acting like you do. So I'm like, well, I will educate you then, because I have no problem causing a scene in public. So even though it's probably not helping my mom with her anxiety, but I mean, you just have to know your rights, and you have to stand your ground sometime, you know? Like, people will walk over you if you allow them to. And as someone with a true service animal, you know your rights. So don't be afraid to tell people them. And people need to listen to that unless you want to get sued. So, but yeah, so that's kind of, I just wanted to take some time and do a video about this today, because I've heard a lot of instances from my mom as of late when they traveled for those 2 weeks to the different places that they were going to, and she had a really awful experience with the demon lady I've been talking about. And it was, I don't like to hear that kind of stuff. I don't like to hear that kind of stuff. And then even at Disney again, the one security guard was super nice, just asked her what, you know, Tinkerbell did for my mom, and you know, my mom explained it, and he was all good. And then literally like 10 feet up the way, this other security guard decides to act like she's not going to be able to come through. And it's like, she already went past security, she already answered those questions. This guy had no right to say anything at that point, and he had literally heard the conversation. So at that point, my mom's just like, I'm not even going into this conversation with you, because I already just went through security with the other guy and explained everything, and he was cool and good, and they were on their way. So at that point, they're just like, we're not even engaging, and just kept going, because it's like, she already answered the questions, she's got all the proof, like, so I guess that's why I just get really upset and emotional about this conversation, because yes, there are people out there that abuse the system, but those are the people that make me mad, because they're making it that much harder for the people that really do have disabilities and who really shouldn't be given a hard time, because it provokes their disability. And yeah, and it's just, and me also having certain invisible illnesses as well. I mean, at some point, if I had a dog that actually could train to recognize certain things of me when I do get my invisible illness, that would be great. None of my dogs qualify for that at this point. They're not trained. They're both rescue dogs. They both have their own issues. They probably could use their own service dog. But someday down the line, I would potentially like to get a dog trained for me and have it as a service dog. And odds are it would be a small dog, because they're just more easily manageable. And, you know, for mental disabilities, you don't necessarily need the big dog for like supportive walking, or, you know, to pull a wheelchair, or, you know, to necessarily do some of the things that big dogs, they may be a little bit more helpful for like the physical disabilities. But I mean, like it said, you can't judge the dog breed or the disability. Like, you just can't do that. So I've blabbed on long enough. This is literally going to be an hour long, so I'm going to close it there. I I'm going to try and timestamp each of these in the different sections. That way, if you are one of those people who have a service dog and someone starts giving you a hard time, you could literally pull up this video, find the timestamp, and have them listen, because these literally are the FDA guidelines. So I'm not pulling them from thin air. I'm pulling it from the government site. I know I've said that 3 times, but I just want to reiterate that because it really was from the legitimate site. So people cannot protest, and they can pull it up themselves if they want. So, but as always, if you like my content, please like, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Most of the time I like to talk about witchy stuff, but when it does come to mental health, I take it very seriously, and really health in general, being a massage therapist. So yeah, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, stay witchy, and I will see you next time for another video. Bye.